TCU has the pieces in place to have an elite wide receiver group once again.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for 12 years. We're brought to you today by Gametime. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. When you download the Gametime app, look at Super Bowl tickets. Do it today on the Gametime app. TCU had an elite wide receiver group last year. Savion Williams and Jack Besh, currently going through draft preparation. J.P. Richardson, same thing. He had a big season as well. And I was looking at stats. I'm going to talk here in a minute about Eric McAllister and the guys that are returning. Eric McAllister had 762 yards. I don't know if you can have a quiet 762 yards. He had some big moments. That touchdown against Kansas was huge. He had a really nice bowl game, right, when Savion and Jack sat out, and you got to see what it would look like if Eric McAllister led this offense from that spot. But, man, 762 yards on 39 receptions, about 20 yards per catch. I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table this upcoming season as the main threat on the outside. But I believe, once again, TCU has the pieces in place to have another elite wide receiver group in a room that makes big plays and makes things happen. The passing game last season was so good. It's really hard to overstate how good they were. It made up for the fact that they could not run the ball very well. It made up for the fact that the defense was inconsistent at times. And I think it's the main reason they ended up winning 9 games and turning things around in the second half of the year. And I've been doing this series. I've started this series earlier this week. What does TCU need to do in the spring transfer portal window? We're going to go position by position. Do they need to add somebody? We looked at quarterback. I said no. You got Josh Hoover. You got a veteran in Ken Seals. You have a young guy in Adam Schobel. Stay put. Allow those dudes to work. And at wide receiver, I'm once again going to say no. I'm not trying to be boring about it, but it's the truth. I think TCU has all the ingredients they need to be really good at wide receiver once again. And they did some work in the transfer portal this offseason already. The biggest name that they landed in the portal so far, Jordan Dwyer, the wide receiver out of Idaho, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, 1,192 yards last season, 12 touchdowns, 78 receptions. The year before that, he was very productive as well and did it at a high level in FCS football, had some big games in the playoffs, went off for like over 200 yards in their first-round playoff game. Idaho plays in the Kibbe Dome. There's highlights, that you can check out, but really special player and had an outstanding season this past year. 189 against Montana State in their second-round playoff game, 166 against Lehigh in their first-round playoff game. Did a nice job in the biggest moments. And he is the dude that is going to line up on the outside, on the other side of Eric McAllister, and sort of be, the next big-time wideout that TCU is trying to make happen. He was highly sought after in the portal. I know Washington was very involved. Ole Miss wanted to get him in on a visit, but TCU got him on campus. They got him committed and signed. He shut his recruitment down. And so a really great job of this coaching staff finding Jordan Dwyer and getting him on board quickly so that he can step in and make things happen for this team next year. On the other side of him, Eric McAllister, who started the season with a suspension, but when he finally got in there and made plays, you saw the potential. Again, 762 yards on 39 receptions and had big moments. He had that touchdown catch against Kansas where it was like a scramble drill. Josh Hoover got out of the pocket, hit him on the sideline. He made a move, took it to the house, had that 84-yard touchdown catch against Texas Tech where he caught it on the back shoulder, turned up field, made plays. He is huge, man. Like, he's big. He's physical. He can go up and catch 50-50 balls. Honestly, he was probably their best big play threat, at least in the second half of the season. I mean, Jack Besh was also really good at getting chunk yardage, and Savion Williams could do it, even though it was usually with yards after the catch. But McAllister just has such a big frame. He's really good at catching the back shoulder ball, just going up and making a play over a smaller defender, catching a curl route or a stop route and turning up field and getting 6 or 7 more yards. Had a nice game against Utah he's coming into the season with the expectation of being the dude. And you're replacing a ton of production at this spot. Like, there's no way getting around it. Savion Williams, Jack Betch, and J.P. Richardson were all-time great frogs. The J.P. Richardson spot, who's going to replace him? I think it's going to be Joseph Manjack, at least as the starter in the slot. And Manjack's numbers last season were not overly impressive. 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. But he's been very consistent over his career. In 2023, he had 577 yards and 6 touchdowns. And talking to Parker Ainsworth, who hosts Locked On Cougs, the Houston show, I was like, what's the reason for the downturn in production? He basically said, well, Houston was bad on offense last year. It didn't show up that night against TCU. If you watched that Friday night game, you would have thought that Houston offense was pretty good. But throughout the season, they struggled to score. They struggled to rack up yards. And with the quarterback carousel they had with Zion Chris and Donovan Smith, Manjack was one of the casualties of that and just not having a big year. But a good blocking wide receiver, can get yards after the catch, gets good separation, and should be an important part of this receiving core. And the main reason I don't think that they should dip in the portal and go find somebody, receiver is one of those spots. Like, you can always go get another body, like go get a depth piece or a young player that you're like, all right, let's bank on this dude maybe making some strides in having a season under his belt in practice, getting reps, and then maybe next year he'll really pop and show up. But TCU's already got a pretty good stable of young wideouts that have shown promise and that should be ready to rock and roll. I mean, Jordan Bailey, towards the end of last season, became kind of a gadget guy. They would use him on those jet sweeps and those pop passes. And I think he'll be the dude in the slot that kind of takes over after Manjack. And you can also use him in special teams. Like I said, you can line him up in some different ways. Somebody earlier this offseason was like, do you feel like Jordan Bailey could be a potential threat in that Wildcat spot? And I said no, because I just don't think it's big enough. But I do feel like he's a guy that if you wanted to toy around with the idea of, hey, let's line him up in the backfield and see if we can create some one-on-one mismatches against linebackers, against safeties. Let's toss the ball out to him at times and just see if he can get the edge with that speed. I think that's definitely a possibility. So he's sort of your jack of all trades. Like, we can use him in a lot of different ways type of guy, but you also want to see him grow in that route running. I think another guy that this will kind of be a do or die type of year for him from a production standpoint. We've heard a lot about Major Everhart and his potential. I know during fall camp last year, Sonny was like, Major was one of those guys that looked totally different. He's having a year of college football experience under his belt. He seemed more comfortable, had a better idea of what was going on, but it didn't translate to the field. And he dealt with some injuries last year. This is the season where it's like, all right, if you're going to be a part of this rotation, we need to start seeing those strides. And he's another elite athlete. So along with Jordan Bailey, I think there's some possibilities with how to use those guys and get them the ball in space and allow them to use their speed to make things happen. Jakyle Baker had a very quiet freshman year. Didn't hear a lot from him, but he was a 4-star recruit. He was the highest rated recruit in that 2024 class. And so this is his chance to start moving up the depth chart. And then Braylon James, I think, is a name to know. When we talk about those outside wideouts, I'm projecting right now that the starters are going to be Eric McAllister and then Jordan Dwyer on the other side. But Braylon James might have something to say about that. I mean, he came in from Notre Dame last year, didn't play a lot this season. But I do remember it's always risky to fall in love with a short sample size, and this will be the epitome of that because I'm talking about one play. But he had a really nice catch in the bowl game. It was a very simple route. Like, it was just a stop route, and Ken Seals threw it too far to the outside, and he just reached out and made a nice fingertip grab. But that's another guy who really possesses that prototypical size and speed that you want to see from your outside wide receivers. And they went and got him after that year at Notre Dame where he didn't play a whole lot or at all, honestly. and they gave him a chance to get accustomed to the program, spend an offseason here. So he's another guy that, like, if you're going to start seeing the field and seeing impactful plays from him, this would be the season where you would expect it to happen. They've also got 2 freshmen coming in, Ed Small from Austin Anderson and Richard Terry from the Metroplex, who are highly rated and dudes that look like they could contribute right away. Terry Shelton's from Ranch View in Carrollton, Texas. And he was an Arizona commit. He decommitted, and they committed to TCU. So late in the process. But Terry Shelton and Ed Small are kind of different stories. Terry Shelton has a very high ceiling. I mean, he's got the prototypical size that you want from a big outside wide receiver. He also played basketball in high school and played at a high level. And you saw the jumping ability, that ability to go win one-on-one matchups and make plays. And so you're hoping that comes to life here in his freshman season as he gets into a college football program, that he can continue to develop that. I emailed Terry Shelton's coach on signing day, and his head coach, Richard Leonard at Ranch, he said, Terry is a very gifted athlete with great hands, all the physical tools to make it as a player. With a long career playing on Sundays, in my short stint here as a high school coach, he has improved his wide receiver and football IQ exponentially. So there's a really high ceiling for him as a player. Ed Small was just a dude who was super productive at the high school level. When TCU got him committed, he was a 3-star. It was kind of an under-the-radar signing, but he was the MVP of the 7-on-7 tournament the summer before his senior year. He had an outstanding senior season. He just gets open. He makes plays. And I know that's a guy that the coaching staff is really excited about what he can do, his potential as a player. So overall, I think you have a great mix here. You've got guys that are veterans who are coming back and trying to take on a bigger role. You have some young players with a lot of talent, and they're vying for an opportunity to go make plays. So no need to go make a move in the transfer portal. When we come back, speaking of wide receivers, Jack Besh is making things happen at the Senior Bowl, continues to have a big week. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Thank you to one of our great sponsors, Gametime. NFL playoffs, Super Bowl, it's coming up just a little over a week away, right? The energy, the excitement, it's unmatched. The thrill of seeing your team clinch a playoff win or clinch a Super Bowl victory, that's a memory you'll never forget. This year, Gametime makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Gametime Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters being there. They have curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. They show you a picture of what your view is going to be from your seat before you buy. The tickets go straight to the app immediately. There's no hidden fees. There's fees, but they tell you what they are up front. Don't forget to use the promo code. Download the Gametime app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Gametime. Give it a try today. Before we get to Jack Besh, one note, because I just saw this as I was getting ready to record. Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports, Horned Frog Blitz, he said on Twitter, word on the street is that TCU coaches Sonny Dykes and Andy Avalos will be taking the Frog Copter to Arlington Martin today, and that's the home of 4-star commit Jesse Ford. Jesse Ford, one of those recent 2026 commits, along with a bunch of defensive linemen. And the helicopter that they use, it's always intriguing to me to see when they pull it out. Now, it looks like they're going to make a couple stops today. Jeremy also said they're going to Sulphur Springs to visit an offensive lineman. So I imagine, I guess the practicality of it is, hey, we got to go to a few different places today. Let's do it quickly. But that's a flex, man. That's a flex when you show up in a helicopter to somebody's school. That certainly makes you feel like you're important and valued. I remember the first time I saw the helicopter being used. I cover Temple football, Temple High School, and Quentin Johnston was playing in a Friday night game, obviously. I assume it was on a TCU bye week because I think that would be the only reason why Gary would do this. But Gary flew down, and this was when Quentin was committed to Texas, and he was really quiet about his recruitment. Like, he committed to Texas, and then he didn't honestly talk about it much. We knew TCU was still in the mix, but there wasn't a lot of talk about the possibility of him signing there. And they got him flipped like right before signing day. But this was that fall before he signed in December. Gary just flew in the helicopter, showed up to a Temple game, and came by, said, hey. It made an impact for sure. Now, I think ultimately, like, Malcolm Kelly and that relationship was what carried the day and what got him on campus and got him signed to TCU. But, yeah, the helicopter didn't hurt. So awesome. Go reinforce that goodwill with Jesse Ford and make sure that he's locked in. And you have the added bonus of saying, hey, we got a helicopter here if you need it. We can get to you quickly. We can fly across to Arlington, only a 30-minute drive, so not sure how fast it is in a helicopter ride, but that's pretty cool. They're getting out all the stops for this 2026 class and doing a nice job so far with that. Senior Bowl going on right now. Game's on Saturday, but honestly, the game's important. The practices are really where guys make huge waves and make impacts. That's where now the scouts can see one-on-one matchups and see how these guys are approaching what would be a typical like NFL practice. And so Jack Besh has made himself some money this week, it appears. Like, his name keeps coming up. I saw multiple draft experts being like, he's one of the winners of this week. He keeps making plays. And one of our guys, Kyle Krabs, who is host of Locked On NFL Scouting, he named Jack Besh as a riser in his article on the 33rdteam.com. He said we may as well call him Big Play Besh. Jack Besh exploded this season at TCU with explosive plays down the field and brought the same to the Senior Bowl, where he logged at least one big play down the field in each of the 3 days of practice. He has strong hands, is an uber physical player, including in the run game where he helps carve out added running room on the second level. Besh was shredding defensive backs all week, whether it was on one-on-ones or in team drills. He's a rising talent who does the dirty work to help improve the whole offense and should be targeted accordingly come April. Jack Besh is a super physical player. He's a great blocker. Honestly, him and Savion both. Like, Savion and Jack were both super committed to blocking on the outside in the run game when they were at TCU. And Jack's he's a former tight end, honestly. So it's not shocking that he's been an H-back before. Like, he's played in spots where you have to be physical. He just brings that now to the outside wide receiver spot. And so you're not going to see corners jam him often. You're not going to see guys win. He's going to get free releases. And that should help him, because the question around Jack is just going to be his athleticism. So the combine will be big for him. I'm hoping that he gets invited. I hope he runs, because I think that's one of those areas where if you prepare really well, which I expect that Jack will, you can put up a decent enough time that it should quiet a lot of the concerns about you as a prospect. And while Savion is probably going to make big things happen at the combine because his physical testing should be out of the park, I feel like Jack can hold his own. And that'll sort of be the last piece to this puzzle. He had a super great, outstanding year at TCU where he showed a lot of really good things on film. And now you just add to that at the Senior Bowl in these practices. He's making plays. He's making things happen. Final piece here. Can you show that you can be like athletic enough, explosive enough, have that quick twitch and that speed to win those one-on-one matchups when you play on Sundays? But outstanding job by him. And he's also like, he's coming off that meniscus injury. It's not that long ago. That Cincinnati game where he went down in the first half with the knee injury. He missed the bowl game because of it. I don't know if he would have played anyway, but the decision was made much easier because he missed the bowl game and there was no reason to risk anything. And so he's coming off that as well. And he's still making plays, making things happen, and has just been outstanding. So good luck to him. Good luck to Savion, JP Richardson, all the guys that are getting ready for the NFL draft. Super good news, though, that he's making things happen and is just making a big impression at the Senior Bowl. I don't feel like – I think we get we're very TCU-centric, obviously. So we get very caught up in, man, all these TCU wide receivers that have gone on did not have great careers in the NFL. I'm not sure the league looks at it that way. It would be cool, though, to just see somebody step up. And I think Quentin Johnson made strides this year. Unfortunately, there were some big moments on national TV where he had some missteps and some drops. But overall, he had a much more productive season this past year. We'll come back and get some reaction. I'll give you the hoop schedule for this week. It's all coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. TCU men's and women's basketball this weekend. The men take on Colorado. Colorado is 0-9 in conference play. This game is at home. I don't think this is a tournament team anyway, but if this team has any sort of pulse or any sort of glimmer of hope, you got to start racking up wins against the bottom of the conference. And so it starts with a victory against Colorado. If you can do that, it's that weird, they play on Saturday and Sundays now, but TCU getting the Sunday matchup, 3 p.m. at Shaw-Meyer Arena. One of my frequent listeners, Big Easy, said, I said on the program at the beginning of the basketball season this team wasn't going to make the dance. Blaming it on Collins' injury is borderline delusional. I don't think I was blaming – I agree with you. I don't think this team would have made the NCAA tournament even if Collins was healthy. I do think it made the team significantly worse when he went down. I don't think this was a good team from the beginning either, but he turned out to be their best player, or at least he was through the first month of the season. And so losing your leading point scorer and leading assist guy on a team that's already struggling is not good, right? And I feel like it contributed to, even more of a downturn for him. It's also just weird that with his injury, you're not seeing young players get out there more. And I don't know if they're just not making plays in practice. And so Jamie's like, well, I'm not going to reward you if you're not going to show up and make things happen on the practice floor. But you're 3-6 in conference play. You're starting to get to the place where it's like, at this point, you got to think more about 2026 than what you're trying to do here in 2025. So we'll see how they approach it. But they play at 3. The women also play at 3 against Iowa State. On the road names, always a tough place to play. They call themselves the Twister Sisters, which I love. They're in Iowa State, the women's team. But Iowa State's coming off a loss to Kansas State. So you got to keep pace with the Wildcats. TCU plays Iowa State on Sunday, and then they play Kansas State on Wednesday on the road in what will most likely be a matchup for sole possession of first place in the Big 12. So, big weekend, big week coming here for Mark Campbell's team. They got 6 days off, which this team doesn't have a deep rotation. I've talked a couple times this week about how hopefully that'll be helpful, but you have to show now what it is and what the plan is moving forward and capitalize on it. So a win against Iowa State will go a long way in doing that. Yesterday, I talked about 4-star recruit Brock Boyd from South Lake Carroll and TCU needing to hold on to him as he gets attention from other schools, namely Ohio State got an offer there. Off Track says it may come down to playing time and NIL for Brock. We have the potential advantage on playing time, not NIL. All in all, I'm getting Ty Hawkins vibes. I know SMU is no Ohio State. Yeah, the Ty Hawkins thing was a weird deal. I feel like that was just SMU kind of money whipping him. And listen, that's fair game in today's NIL world. They made a big offer. He took it. TCU ended up with Adam Schobel. I think it ended up fine. I'm not sure where TCU would stand on NIL with Brock Boyd, but I think the playing time talk is intriguing because, you can go to Ohio State and play, but you're probably going to be surrounded by a lot of talent. And I think there's a ton of talent here at the wide receiver room at TCU as well, but I do feel like there's a clearer path and a quicker path to playing time in Fort Worth, and maybe that'll be something that they can highlight. Born Calm says, I'm not really worried about the wide receiver position. TCU has recruits there well, whether it's in high school or the portal. I think the O-line should be the focus right now. Well, I think you can do both things at once. But, yeah, you're right. You gotta solidify that offensive line and continue to build it. And I wouldn't say I worry about the wide receiver room, but, 2 years ago, this wide receiver group was not very good. And some of that was because of injury. But I don't think you can get lazy and just say, well, we always have talent there, and there's always talent in the state of Texas. Those things have been true in the past. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be good or elite at that particular position group. And Justin said Brock will be sitting behind a steady supply of 5 stars at Ohio State. His best chance is to get to a program that would put him on the field. He should reach out to Jack Best, who left LSU to prove their talents at TCU. Yeah, I mean, that's a good selling point. Getting on the field quickly, playing at a high level. And hopefully Terry Shelton and Ed Small make some things happen this year, because I think that would help sell that idea, right? Of, hey, if you can play, we're ready to get you on the field immediately. We'll come back on Monday. Thanks for rocking with me on another week. It's Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform.